Get out! And don't you ever come back!
My husband threw me out of our house at 11:47 p.m. during a storm. Not out of anger that passed quickly. Not after a fight where both people said things they did not mean. He opened the front door himself, tossed my suitcase onto the wet driveway, and said, "Get out, Clara. I'm done pretending you belong here." Rain poured behind him like the sky itself was trying to hide my shame. I stood in the doorway wearing an old gray sweater, holding my handbag against my chest, staring at the man I had loved for 12 years. Daniel Monroe, my husband, the man whose business I had helped build, the man whose name I had defended when creditors called, the man whose mother had spent years reminding me I came from nothing. The man who now stood in the warm yellow light of our house, while I stood barefoot on cold stone, my suitcase lying open in a puddle. Behind him, his mother, Patricia, stood near the staircase in a silk robe, arms folded, smiling like she had finally won a private war. And beside her stood Vanessa, Daniel's client relations director, the woman whose perfume had been on his shirts for months, the woman who suddenly knew where our wine glasses were kept, the woman wearing my cream cashmere scarf around her neck, like it had always belonged to her. Vanessa looked at me with false sadness. "Clara, maybe this is for the best," she said softly. I looked at Daniel. "You let her wear my scarf?" He laughed. Not kindly. "Still worried about scarves? That is exactly your problem." "My problem?" "Yes," he said. "You cling to small things because you never learned how to be part of a bigger life." Patricia stepped forward. "Daniel has outgrown this marriage. You should accept that with dignity." Dignity. There I was, rain soaking the hem of my sweater, suitcase in mud, marriage breaking in front of a mistress and a mother-in-law, and Patricia wanted dignity from me. Daniel picked up a manila folder from the entry table and tossed it onto the wet step. "Divorce papers. My lawyer will send the rest. You can keep whatever little things are in that suitcase. The house is mine. The company is mine. The bank accounts are mine. You'll get a settlement if you don't make this difficult." I stared at the folder. Water spread across the paper. My name blurred first. Clara Monroe. Soon, if Daniel had his way, even that would be taken. "You pack my suitcase?" I asked. Vanessa looked away. Patricia did not. Daniel shrugged. Vanessa helped. "You were taking too long to understand." That sentence hit harder than the rain. Not because he was leaving me, because he had invited another woman to touch my private things before I even knew my marriage was over. I looked past him into the house. The marble entry, the staircase, the chandelier, the framed black and white photo from our 10th anniversary, still hanging on the wall like it belonged to a couple that had existed in another life. I had chosen the paint colors. I had cooked in that kitchen. I had hosted his clients in that dining room. I had slept beside him during the years when he was too broke to buy confidence and had to borrow mine. But now he stood there like I had been a guest who had overstayed. "Where do you expect me to go?" I asked. Daniel's face hardened. "That's not my concern anymore." Patricia smiled. "You should have thought about that before you embarrassed Daniel." I almost laughed. Embarrassed him? Vanessa's voice turned gentle and poisonous. "You made a scene at the investor dinner." The scene. Yes. The scene where I had asked Daniel why Vanessa was seated beside him at the head table, while I was placed near the back like a distant cousin. The scene where I had heard him introduce Vanessa as the woman who understands my vision. The scene where I finally said, in front of 3 investors, "Funny, I thought I was the woman who helped you survive when there was no vision, only debt." That was the crime. Not his betrayal, my memory. Daniel stepped closer. "I don't want to hear another word about what you did years ago. I built this life, not you." A strange calm moved through me. Slow. Cold. Final. I looked at him and understood something I had refused to see for too long. Daniel had not forgotten what I did for him. He remembered. He simply hated needing to remember. I bent down, picked up the wet divorce folder, placed it inside my handbag, and lifted my suitcase out of the puddle. It was heavy, not with clothes, with humiliation. Daniel looked satisfied. He thought I would cry. He thought I would beg. He thought I would ask for one more night, one more talk, one more chance to prove I could still be useful. Instead, I stepped backward into the rain. "Goodbye, Daniel," I said. He frowned. That was not the answer he expected. Patricia said, "She'll call by morning." Vanessa laughed softly. I turned and walked down the driveway, dragging the suitcase behind me. Every wheel hit the wet stone like a small goodbye. But what Daniel did not know was that while he slept that night beside the woman wearing my scarf, I was not looking for a motel. I was calling the attorney my late father had told me to contact, only when I had nowhere left to go. By sunrise, I would be standing at the gates of a $30 million Malibu mansion overlooking the Pacific Ocean. A mansion Daniel had never heard of. A mansion my father had left in my name. A mansion that would become the first crack in the world Daniel thought he owned. Before I continue, tell me where you are watching from tonight. And if you have ever been thrown away by someone who thought your silence meant you had nothing, stay with this story. Because sometimes the person they push into the rain is carrying a key they forgot to ask about. My name is Clara Monroe now, but before marriage made my name sound like it belonged inside Daniel's world, I was Clara Whitcomb. The Whitcomb name never impressed anyone when I was young. Not because it had no history, because my father spent his whole life hiding that history behind work shirts, old trucks, and a stubborn refusal to act rich even after he became rich enough to stop repairing his own fence. My father, Henry Whitcomb, owned a small carpentry shop in Santa Barbara when I was a child. At least, that was what I thought he owned. The shop sat on a quiet street between a hardware store and a bakery. It smelled like sawdust, varnish, coffee, and my father's peppermint gum. He made custom cabinets, restored old doors, repaired wooden chairs, built bookshelves, and sometimes accepted payment in fruit from elderly customers who insisted their apricot trees were as good as money. My mother, Elise, died when I was 10. That left my father and me in a house too quiet for two grieving people. He did not know how to braid hair, but he learned. He did not know how to pack school lunches, but he tried. For months, every sandwich had too much mustard because he thought mustard was moisture. I ate them anyway because I knew grief had made him practical in strange ways. My father was not a man of many speeches, but he had rules. Never ignore how someone treats service workers. Never lend money you need for rent. Never sign a document you did not read. Never marry someone who is kind only when winning. Never let anyone convince you that love means having no exit. That last rule confused me. Why would love need an exit? I asked him once. He was sanding an old table on the porch, wood dust on his arms. "Because baby," he said, "a house without a door is not a home. It is a trap." I thought he was talking about buildings. My father was almost always talking about people. The Malibu mansion had been part of my childhood only as a rumor wrapped in silence. I knew there was a beach property because once, when I was 12, I heard my father speaking to a lawyer on the phone about maintenance costs. When I asked him, he said it belonged to a trust and changed the subject. He did that often. Changed the subject whenever money came close. We did not live poorly, but we lived simply. My father drove the same truck for 15 years. He wore boots until they looked like they had survived a war. He cooked beans, rice, and grilled fish. He used coupons. He fixed everything himself. I thought we were comfortable, not wealthy. That was how he wanted it. Years later, I learned why. My grandfather, Arthur Whitcomb, had been a real estate developer in Southern California. Not famous, but sharp and patient. He bought land before people wanted it, held it when others sold, and built slowly. Some of his properties became valuable beyond anything his younger self could have imagined. But wealth broke parts of his family. His oldest son became reckless. His sister married a man who spent her trust faster than lawyers could stop him. Cousins fought over houses. Friends became flatterers. My father watched money turn people into masks. So when he inherited, he hid most of it behind trusts, holding companies, and quiet managers. He kept the carpentry shop because it made him feel honest. He raised me around work because he wanted my hands to know effort before my name knew assets. At the time, I thought he was just private. Now I know he was protecting me. I met Daniel Monroe when I was 25. He came into the carpentry shop needing custom shelves for his tiny office. He was trying to start a boutique architectural development firm with more confidence than capital. He wore a white shirt with sleeves rolled up, carried a notebook full of sketches, and spoke like every empty building in the city was waiting for him to notice its future. He was beautiful in that hungry way. Ambitious men often are at the beginning. Not polished yet, not cruel yet, or maybe not powerful enough to show it. He told my father he wanted reclaimed wood because old materials carry soul. My father looked at him over his glasses. Old materials also warp if you don't respect their grain. Daniel laughed. I laughed too. My father did not. Daniel noticed me behind the counter. I was managing invoices, answering calls, and sketching cabinet designs in the margins of an order sheet. "You work here?" he asked. I practically grew up under that workbench. He smiled. "Then you probably know more about structure than half the architects I deal with." That was the first compliment he ever gave me. I remember it because it sounded like he saw me. For a while, he did. Daniel returned 3 times before his shelves were finished. Then he came back with coffee. Then with questions about wood finishes. Then with an invitation to dinner. My father watched him carefully. After Daniel left, I asked, "What do you think?" My father swept sawdust into a pile. "He wants to build tall." "That's good. Maybe. You don't like him. I do not know him. But," he leaned on the broom, "some men want a partner. Some want scaffolding." I rolled my eyes. "Dad, just make sure he knows the difference before you climb with him." I did not listen. Love makes warnings sound like insults when you want approval more than truth. Daniel and I dated for 2 years. At first, he was attentive, funny, and full of plans. He took me to cheap taco stands and pointed at empty lots, describing what he would build there one day. He called me his good luck, his calm place, his anchor. I should have been careful with that last word. Anchors are useful because they hold something else steady. They do not choose the direction. Daniel's company, Monroe Urban Design, struggled in the beginning. He had talent and charm, but not discipline. He could sell a dream better than he could manage a budget. He overpromised, missed deadlines, trusted the wrong contractors, accepted projects with thin margins because he wanted the portfolio more than the profit. I helped. Of course I helped. I knew invoices from my father's shop. I knew vendors. I knew materials. I knew when a contractor was lying about delivery timelines. I knew how to call angry clients and calm them without giving away the whole store. When Daniel's first office rent came due, and he was short, I paid it. When his assistant quit, I spent evenings organizing his files. When a major client nearly walked away because Daniel forgot to send revised drawings, I stayed up until 3 a.m. helping him assemble the package. When he cried in his car after losing a bid, I held his hand and told him he was not finished. Back then, he looked at me like I was the only person who understood him. Maybe I was. Maybe that was the problem. We married when I was 28. My father attended, but he was quiet. He paid for nothing extravagant because I did not want a big wedding. We married in a small garden near the coast, under white flowers and soft light. Daniel cried when I walked down the aisle. My father gave my hand to him reluctantly. At the reception, my father danced with me and said, "If life ever sends you home, you do not need permission to enter." I laughed. "Dad, you make marriage sound like a weather warning." He smiled sadly. "Sometimes love is weather. Sometimes it is climate. Learn the difference." I hugged him and told him not to worry. He did worry. He had reason to. For the first 5 years, Daniel and I lived in a rented bungalow with cracked tile and a kitchen so small only one person could open a drawer at a time. We were not unhappy. Tired, yes. Stressed, often, but hopeful. I worked at my father's shop by day and helped Daniel at night. Daniel called everything ours back then. Our dream, our company, our future, our risk. Then the first major project succeeded. A boutique hotel renovation in Santa Monica. Daniel's design was praised. A local magazine featured him. Investors started returning calls. Clients who had ignored him suddenly wanted meetings. Success entered our marriage like a third person. At first, charming. Then demanding. Then controlling the room. Daniel began changing slowly. He bought better suits. Then a better car. Then a larger office. Then he hired staff and told me I no longer needed to handle the messy things. He said it like a gift. It was removal. The messy things were the things that had kept him alive. Invoices, vendors, client apologies, budget warnings, document tracking, reality. Without them, Daniel could become the visionary full-time, while other people cleaned the floor beneath the dream. I was proud of him, then proud of us, then proud in silence. Because soon, when people asked how he started, Daniel said, "I built Monroe Urban from nothing." The first time he said it at a dinner, I smiled because his hand was resting on my knee under the table. The second time I looked at him. The third time I said in the car, "You know it wasn't nothing." He sighed. "Clara, it's just a phrase. It erases people. It's branding. It's lying with better lighting." He stared at the road. "Why do you always need credit?" That sentence shut me up for months, because it made me question my own hurt. Maybe I did want credit. Maybe that was selfish. Maybe a good wife did not count sacrifices. But silence is expensive. It charges interest. Daniel's mother, Patricia, moved closer after his company began making real money. She had always tolerated me, but success made her bolder. Patricia Monroe believed her son had been destined for wealth and that I was part of the temporary struggle story he would one day outgrow. She called me sweet in a way that meant simple. She praised my cooking like it was the only thing I could do. She once told a table of women at a charity lunch, "Clara was perfect for Daniel during his building years. Every man needs humble support before he steps into his real life." His real life. I was sitting beside her when she said it. Daniel heard. He laughed awkwardly, but he did not correct her. That was a pattern. Patricia cut. Daniel smiled. I bled quietly. Then my father got sick. It began with weakness in his hands. He dropped a cup in the shop and joked that the cup had betrayed him. Then came tests, then hospital visits, then words that made the room tilt. A neurological disease. Progressive. No cure. My father, who had built doors, tables, cabinets, and half the quiet safety of my life with his hands, began losing the use of them. I spent more time with him. Daniel did not like that. At first, he pretended concern. Then inconvenience appeared. "Do you have to go again tonight?" "He fell yesterday. We have the Westlake dinner. My father needs me." "I need you too." No, he did not. He needed my presence, the way he needed good lighting at events, to soften the room, to prove stability, to remind people he had a wife who made him look grounded. My father noticed. Even sick, he noticed everything. One evening, while I helped him drink soup because his hands were shaking too much, he said, "Does Daniel still see you?" I smiled too quickly. "Of course." That was not an answer. I set the spoon down. "Dad, please." He looked out the window toward the workshop. "I should have told you more." "About what?" "About exits." I knew then he meant money. The trusts, the properties, the part of our life he had kept behind curtains. But I was tired, afraid, angry at the unfairness of his illness. I did not want documents. I wanted my father. "I don't care about that," I said. "I know," he replied. "That is why I must make sure you have it." A week before he died, he called me to his bedside. His voice was weaker by then, but his eyes were clear. "In my safe," he whispered. "Blue folder, silver key. Call Miriam Vale when you are ready." "Miriam who?" "Attorney." I gripped his hand. "Dad, don't." "Listen," I cried silently. He hated tears when he could not fix them. "There is a house," he said. "The beach property? He smiled faintly. Malibu. Your mother loved it. I kept it for you. I don't need a house. You might. Daniel and I have a home. His eyes filled with sadness. No, baby. You have a place where you are allowed to stay as long as you are useful. That hurt me. I pulled my hand back. He let me. Not because it did not hurt him too. Because he knew truth sometimes arrives before comfort can carry it. I love him, I whispered. I know. You don't understand him. I understand men who build ladders and call the people beneath them wood. I stood, angry and heartbroken. I can't talk about this. He nodded. Then open the folder when you can. Those were among the last full words he ever said to me. He died 3 days later. Grief turned the world gray. Daniel gave a polished speech at the funeral. Everyone said he was supportive. They did not see him checking his phone near the graveside. They did not hear Patricia whisper that it was merciful my father had gone before becoming too much responsibility. They did not know Daniel left the reception early to meet an investor. I went to my father's shop alone after the funeral. The tools were still in place. The air smelled like sawdust and loss. I opened the safe. Inside was the blue folder. I looked at it, touched it, then closed the safe again. I was not ready. That is what I told myself. The truth was worse. I was afraid my father's papers would prove he had been right about Daniel. And sometimes, a woman will delay freedom because accepting it means admitting the prison was real. 2 years passed. Daniel's company grew into Monroe Development Group. Larger projects, wealthier clients, investor dinners, magazine covers, a house in Brentwood with marble floors and too many rooms. Patricia moved into the guest wing temporarily, which became permanently. Vanessa appeared 6 months later. Vanessa Cole, Client Relations Director, former luxury events consultant. Perfect posture, perfect hair, perfect ability to make Daniel feel brilliant. The first time I met her, she looked around my home and said, "You created such a calming environment for Daniel." Calming environment. Not home, not life, environment. Like I was part of the decor. Daniel glowed around her. He said she understood high-level clients. He said she had taste. He said she was strategic. He said she was helping him step into the next phase. Next phase. There it was again. His real life, arriving with another woman. The affair was not hidden well. Men who want to leave often become careless before they become honest. Late nights, changed passwords, new cologne, business trips that lasted 1 day too long. Vanessa's name appearing in calendar blocks, marked private. Patricia suddenly inviting Vanessa to family dinners because work and family overlap at Daniel's level. At my level, apparently, wife and furniture overlapped. I confronted Daniel one night in the kitchen. "Are you having an affair?" He looked almost bored. "No." "Then why does she know which wine glasses are for guests?" His jaw tightened. "Because she organizes events here. She touched my scarf. She complimented it. She was wearing it yesterday." He laughed. "That is what this is about? A scarf?" "No. It is about another woman moving into my life while you tell me I'm imagining the door opening." His face changed. "Vanessa is not the problem." "Then what is?" "You," he said. The word was quiet, cruel, honest in the way knives are honest. "You have been stuck for years, Clara. Stuck in grief, stuck in that little carpentry shop mindset, stuck reminding me what you did when I was nothing. I need someone beside me who understands where I am going." I stared at him. "And where am I?" He looked away. That was the answer. The investor dinner happened 3 weeks later. It was held in our house. Of course it was. Patricia oversaw the seating. Vanessa oversaw the guest list. I oversaw the food because apparently, even after being emotionally replaced, I remained useful for menu approval. When I entered the dining room, I saw the place cards. Daniel at the head, the lead investor to his right, Vanessa to his left. Patricia beside the investor's wife. Me halfway down the table. Not beside my husband. Not even near him. I stood there, holding the place card with my name on it, and felt something old in me finally rise. During dinner, Daniel toasted Vanessa, "To the woman who truly understands the future of Monroe development." People clapped. Vanessa touched her glass to his. I waited for him to mention me. He did not. So I spoke. Not loudly, just clearly. "Funny," I said. "I thought I was the woman who helped you survive when there was no future, only debt." The table went silent. Daniel's face turned dark. Patricia whispered, "Clara." Vanessa looked at me like I had spilled something on the floor. Daniel laughed once. "That is not appropriate." "No," I said. "Neither is seating your wife like a distant vendor in her own house." A few investors looked down. One woman looked directly at me with sympathy. I hated the sympathy. Daniel stood. "Excuse us." He gripped my elbow, smiling for the room, and guided me into the hallway. The moment we were alone, his smile vanished. "You just embarrassed me in front of the people funding my next project. You embarrassed yourself. You sound pathetic." I went still. He continued. "Always counting old sacrifices like receipts. Always making yourself the victim. You don't belong in these rooms, Clara. You never did." That was the sentence. The one that ended whatever I had been trying to save. After the guests left, Daniel did not speak to me. The next evening, I came home from my father's old shop, where I had finally begun sorting through things, and found my suitcase packed in the entry. Vanessa was there. Patricia was there. Daniel was waiting. The storm had begun outside. He told me to get out. I did. I walked until my feet hurt. The rain soaked through my sweater. My suitcase wheel broke halfway down the street, so I carried it by the side handle. At a gas station, the clerk looked at me with concern but did not ask questions. I appreciated that. I bought a cheap phone charger because Daniel paid the phone bill, and I did not trust him not to cut it. Then I called Miriam Vale, my father's attorney. She answered at midnight, as if she had been waiting years for the call. "Clara," she said softly, "I'm sorry it's so late." "No," she said, "I am sorry it took this long. That broke me." I cried in the gas station parking lot, rain dripping from my hair, suitcase at my feet, while a woman I barely knew stayed quiet on the line and let me fall apart. When I could speak, I told her Daniel had thrown me out. She did not sound surprised. "Where are you?" I told her. "Stay inside the store. My driver will be there in 20 minutes. "Driver? Your father made arrangements." Of course he did. Even gone, he was still building doors. A black SUV arrived 22 minutes later. The driver, a kind older man named Samuel, loaded my suitcase like it weighed nothing and handed me a towel. "Ms. Whitcomb," he said, "Ms. Vale asked me to take you to the Malibu house." I stared at him. "Tonight?" "Yes, ma'am." "I don't have keys." He smiled gently. "You do." He opened his palm. A silver key lay there. The road to Malibu felt unreal. Rain blurred the windows. Streetlights stretched across the glass. I sat in the back seat wrapped in a towel, holding the key so tightly it left an imprint in my palm. When we reached the gates, the storm had softened to a mist. The mansion rose beyond a long driveway, white stone and glass, perched above the dark ocean. Lights glowed along the walkway. Palm trees moved in the wind. The Pacific roared below like some ancient thing speaking in its sleep. I stepped out of the car and forgot how to breathe. "This is mine?" I whispered. Samuel stood beside the car. "Yes, ma'am." The front door opened before I reached it. A woman in her 60s stood inside, wearing a navy cardigan and holding a warm blanket. "Clara," she said. "I'm Miriam." I walked into the house. The entry was not cold or showy like Daniel's house. It was warm. Soft lights, wood floors, ocean air, cream walls, art I recognized from my childhood. A photo of my mother laughing on a terrace. A photo of my father younger, holding me as a toddler, my face pressed against his cheek. I touched the frame. My knees almost gave out. Miriam placed the blanket around my shoulders. "Your father kept this house ready for you." "For years? For your whole life?" I looked at her. "Why didn't he tell me?" "He tried. But Henry knew that if he forced the truth too early, you might reject it to protect your marriage. I closed my eyes. She was right. I hated that she was right. That night, I slept in the bedroom my mother had once used. The bed faced the ocean. Rain tapped softly against the windows. There was a robe in the closet, fresh towels in the bathroom, and a handwritten note from my father in the drawer beside the bed. My baby Clara, if you are here, then life has hurt you badly enough to bring you home. I am sorry I could not stand at the door myself. This house was your mother's favorite place. She said the ocean made grief feel less trapped. I hope it does the same for you. Rest first. Decide later. Never make a life-changing decision while cold, hungry, or ashamed. I love you, Dad. I pressed the note to my chest and cried until sleep found me. The next morning, the sun rose over a different life. The storm had passed. The ocean below the terrace glittered blue and silver. The air smelled like salt and jasmine. For a moment, I forgot everything. Then my phone buzzed. Daniel. I stared at his name. He had texted at 7:12 a.m. Where are you? Then 7:18. Don't be dramatic. We need to discuss logistics. Then 7:41. My lawyer says you took documents from the house. Return them. At 8:03. Patricia is worried you'll do something stupid. Call me. Worried. That almost made me laugh. At 8:26, he wrote, Vanessa feels terrible about how things happened. That was when I blocked him. Miriam arrived at 9 with coffee, folders, and a calm expression that made me feel less like a broken woman and more like a person standing at the beginning of a meeting. We sat at a long wooden table overlooking the ocean. She explained everything. The Malibu mansion was held in my name through the Whitcomb Family Trust. It was valued at roughly $30 million, likely more depending on the market. But it was only one part of the estate. My father had left me controlling interests in several real estate holdings, timber investments, artisan manufacturing companies, and a quiet development fund called Whitcomb Coastal Partners. That name made me pause. Daniel mentioned Whitcomb Coastal once, I said. He wanted a meeting with them. Miriam nodded. He did. Did he know it was connected to me? No. Your father preferred privacy. Daniel submitted a proposal 18 months ago. My stomach tightened. For what? A luxury coastal redevelopment project. Hotels, residences, private club access. I already knew the answer before asking. Did Whitcomb Coastal approve? No, Miriam said. Your father reviewed the proposal before he died and rejected it. Why? Environmental concerns, community displacement, inflated projections, and his personal concern that Daniel's ambition had outrun his ethics. I looked down. My father had seen everything. Miriam continued. Daniel recently resubmitted through new investors. Vanessa Cole has been coordinating the pitch. A final review is scheduled in 3 weeks. I stared at her. Daniel needs Whitcomb Coastal. Very much. It is not the only funding source, but it controls key land access and community easement agreements. Without Whitcomb, the project likely collapses. Outside, waves struck the rocks below. Steady, unimpressed. I thought of Daniel standing in the doorway, telling me the company was his, the house was his, the money was his, the future was his. I thought of Vanessa wearing my scarf. I thought of Patricia smiling while my suitcase lay in rainwater. What happens now? I asked. Miriam folded her hands. That depends on whether you want revenge or governance. I looked at her. She smiled gently. Your father used to say those two things are easy to confuse when pain is fresh. I turned toward the ocean. I wanted revenge. I will not lie. I wanted Daniel to stand in a room full of people and feel the floor vanish under him. I wanted Vanessa to learn what it felt like to be removed. I wanted Patricia to swallow every word she had ever spoken about my background. But wanting revenge and obeying it are not the same thing. My father did not leave me power so I could become cruel with better documents. I want the truth, I said. Miriam nodded. That is a stronger weapon. Over the next 2 weeks, I learned the size of my own life. That is the only way I can describe it. I had spent years shrinking inside Daniel's world, believing my value was tied to how well I supported him. Then suddenly, there were folders with my name on them. Property maps, trust documents, investment reports, meeting schedules, staff who greeted me as Miss Whitcomb, a housekeeper named Anna who had known my mother, gardeners who remembered my father, a chef who said he had been instructed to keep the pantry stocked in case Miss Clara ever came home. Home. Everyone kept using that word. At first, it hurt. Then it healed. I walked through the mansion slowly, room by room. There was a library with my mother's books, a studio where she had painted, a workshop my father had added for himself, full of hand tools perfectly arranged, a guest room with a trunk of childhood things I thought had been lost, drawings, school photos, my mother's scarf, not the cashmere one Vanessa wore, a different scarf, blue silk, still faintly smelling like cedar. I wore it the day I met the Whitcomb Coastal team. They gathered in a conference room inside the mansion. Not a huge group. Miriam, 2 attorneys, an environmental advisor, a finance lead, and a community relations director named Sophia. They treated me with respect, but not flattery. I appreciated that. We reviewed Daniel's proposal. It was impressive on the surface. Beautiful renderings, luxury villas, private beach club, boutique hotel, high-end retail, wellness center, projected returns, investor commitments. But beneath the shine were problems. Local access routes reduced. A small community market displaced. Environmental protections softened. Worker housing ignored. Public beach access made technically available but practically inconvenient. Sophia tapped the report. This is how wealthy developments erase people without saying the word erase. I thought of Daniel's favorite word. Vision. How often vision meant not looking at whoever stood in the way. Miriam asked, "How would you like to proceed?" I read the executive summary again, then closed the folder. Schedule the review meeting. I'll attend. Miriam studied me. As Clara Whitcomb, I looked out toward the ocean. No, let them present first. 3 weeks after Daniel threw me out, he walked into Whitcomb Coastal's Los Angeles office, expecting to charm strangers. I watched from a private room through a glass wall. Daniel looked polished, navy suit, white shirt, expensive watch, confident posture. Vanessa stood beside him in a cream dress. My cream scarf was gone. Good. Patricia was not there, but I could almost feel her influence in the way Daniel lifted his chin. The investors entered with him. Architects, lawyers, a finance partner. Vanessa arranged the presentation materials. She looked confident, elegant, useful. Daniel began speaking. He was good. That was one of the hardest truths to hold. Daniel was not talentless. He was not stupid. He had vision, charm, and the ability to make people believe a building could become a future. He spoke of coastal beauty, legacy, hospitality, design excellence, community uplift, responsible luxury. Responsible luxury. I almost laughed. Words are cheap when the people harmed by them are not in the room. He clicked through renderings of villas above the water, an elegant hotel terrace, a private members club with glass walls and fire pits. Then Sophia asked about the local market. Daniel smiled. "We intend to incorporate local culture into the development." Sophia said, "The market is being removed." "Relocated," Vanessa corrected. "To where?" Vanessa looked at her notes. "A more appropriate commercial space inland." Inland meaning 7 miles away from its current customer base. Daniel jumped in. "Change is always difficult, but growth requires..." I stopped listening for a moment. Growth requires. Evolution requires. Leadership requires. Men like Daniel loved sentences where the thing being sacrificed had no name. Miriam touched my arm. "You ready?" I nodded. The conference room door opened. Miriam entered first. Everyone stood politely. Then I walked in. Daniel's expression did not change at first because his brain refused the image. I looked different. Navy suit, hair pulled back, blue silk scarf at my neck. No rain, no suitcase, no pleading. Vanessa recognized me first. Her face went white. Daniel stared. Clara? I took the seat at the head of the table. Please continue, I said. No one moved. Miriam spoke. For the record, Clara Whitcomb is the controlling beneficiary of the Whitcomb Family Trust and final approval authority for Whitcomb Coastal Partners. The room went silent. Daniel sat down slowly. Vanessa's hand tightened around her pen. One investor whispered, "Your wife?" I looked at him. Soon-to-be ex-wife. Daniel found his voice. Clara, what is this? A review meeting. You own Whitcomb Coastal. I control it. His eyes flickered. Calculating. Rewriting. Panicking. When were you going to tell me? I looked at him carefully. When were you going to tell me you packed my suitcase with your mistress? No one breathed. Vanessa looked at the table. Daniel's jaw tightened. This is personal. No, I said. Throwing me out in a storm was personal. This is business. Miriam slid the review packet forward. I turned to the investors. Whitcomb Coastal cannot support the proposal as presented. Daniel leaned forward. Clara, don't do this. Do what? Punish the project because of our marriage. I opened the folder. The project reduces practical public access, displaces a local market without adequate relocation support, weakens environmental protections, ignores worker housing needs, and overstates community benefits. I looked at him. You did all that before I entered the room. His face reddened. Vanessa spoke carefully. We are open to adjustments. I turned to her. Good. Then you will remove the private beach club restriction model, create binding protections for local vendors, redesign the access plan, fund workforce housing, and submit an environmental review led by an independent party. Daniel stared. That would change the entire financial structure. Yes. It would reduce returns. Yes. One investor cleared his throat. By how much? Sophia answered with numbers. The room shifted. Money always makes morality practical for people who ignored it when it was only principle. Daniel's voice lowered. Clara, can we speak privately? No. His eyes flashed. You owe me that. I almost smiled. Oh? After all of it, he still thought debt ran toward him. I owe this room a clean decision, I said. Not a private performance. Vanessa tried again. Ms. Whitcomb, we understand there are emotional complications, but... I turned to her. Do not use the word emotional to dismiss consequences you helped create. Her mouth closed. Daniel looked between us. For the first time, he was not controlling the room. For the first time, he was not the person deciding where I sat. For the first time, his future needed my signature, and I was not rushing to make him comfortable. I stood. Whitcomb Coastal rejects the proposal as submitted. A revised version may be reviewed if it meets community, environmental, and governance standards. Until then, no land access, easement approvals, or funding participation will be granted. Daniel looked like I had struck him. I had not. I had only stopped holding him up. The meeting ended quickly after that. Investors gathered papers. Vanessa whispered to someone. Miriam spoke with Sophia. Daniel remained seated, staring at nothing. When the room cleared, he came toward me. Clara! I stopped near the door. You could have told me. I looked at him. You could have treated me with respect before you knew I had money. He swallowed. I was angry. You were cruel. Vanessa and I. Do not explain her to me. He looked down. She didn't mean for it to happen that way. I laughed once. Softly. She helped pack my suitcase. He had no answer. Outside the glass wall, Vanessa watched us. Daniel lowered his voice. I made mistakes. I said nothing. I should not have thrown you out. No. I should not have let Patricia speak to you that way. No. I should not have allowed Vanessa into our home. No. His eyes lifted. Is there any way back? That question did not hurt the way I expected. Maybe because the woman who would have answered yes had been left in the rain. No, I said. His face fell. Clara. No, Daniel. You did not end our marriage when you stopped loving me. You ended it when you decided I was safe to humiliate. I walked away. The fallout came quickly. Daniel's investors paused. Then one withdrew. Then the finance partner requested a full review of Monroe Development's leadership risk. Vanessa resigned after 2 weeks, publicly for personal reasons, privately because she had no interest in standing beside a man whose biggest project had lost access to the land. Patricia called me 3 times. I ignored her. Then she sent a message. Clara, this has gone too far. Daniel is under terrible pressure. You know how much this project means to him. I replied with one sentence. He should have thought about pressure before putting me in the rain. Then I blocked her too. The divorce took 7 months. Daniel fought it first, not emotionally, strategically. He wanted to know what he could claim, what assets were marital, what trusts could be challenged, what properties could be touched. His lawyers learned quickly that my father had built his structures like a carpenter who expected termites. Carefully, thoroughly, with no gaps. The Malibu mansion was mine. The trust was mine. Whitcomb Coastal was mine. Daniel could not touch any of it. That enraged him more than the divorce. I think men like Daniel can survive losing love. Losing access is what breaks them. During those months, I moved fully into the Malibu house. At first, I felt like a guest. I was careful with every surface, afraid to sit on certain chairs, afraid to open drawers, afraid the house would decide I did not belong there either. Then Anna, the housekeeper who had known my mother, found me one morning standing in the kitchen, eating toast over a plate like I was afraid of making crumbs. She took the plate from my hand. Miss Clara, she said, your mother once spilled blueberry jam on that rug and laughed for 10 minutes. Sit down. That was the beginning of belonging. I learned the house. The way the western windows caught sunset, the floorboard near the library that creaked, the lemon tree that produced too much fruit, the path down toward the rocks where the ocean sprayed high on windy days. The old piano my mother had played badly, the workshop where my father had left half-finished shelves as if he might return after lunch. I cried often, but differently. In Daniel's house, tears felt like evidence of weakness. In Malibu, they felt like water returning to a dry place. I reopened my father's carpentry shop too, not as it had been. The old shop became Whitcomb Works, a training studio for young artisans, builders, and designers from low-income backgrounds. We taught woodworking, project management, sustainable building, vendor negotiation, and business basics. I funded scholarships through the trust and partnered with local housing nonprofits. Daniel had always called my father's shop small. Small is where people learn to build honestly. Whitcomb Coastal began changing too. We rejected 2 more flashy proposals that treated communities like background scenery. Then we approved a different project. Smaller than Daniel's, less profitable at first glance. Better. It preserved the local market, protected public beach access, funded worker housing, used sustainable materials, and included apprenticeship placements through Whitcomb Works. Sophia said, "Your father would approve." I said, "My father would ask about the drainage plan." She laughed. He would have. A year after Daniel threw me out, I hosted the first community dinner at the Malibu mansion. Not investors, not celebrities, not people who needed to be impressed by ocean views. I invited the staff who maintained the property, the Whitcomb Works trainees, local vendors, Miriam, Anna, Sophia, Samuel the driver, and Mrs. Barlow from my father's old bakery, who brought apricot pies because she said my father had once accepted 3 baskets of apricots as payment for fixing her counter. We set long tables on the terrace, string lights, simple flowers, food served family style, the ocean below us. At sunset, Miriam stood and raised her glass. "To Henry," she said. Everyone raised theirs. I could barely speak, so I only whispered, "To Dad." Later that night, after everyone left, I walked through the quiet house barefoot, not in fear, not in shame, by choice. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then something made me answer. "Clara," Daniel said. I stopped near the terrace door. How did you get this number? Please don't hang up. I said nothing. I sold the Brentwood house. I knew. Miriam had told me. That was your choice. I couldn't keep it. Silence. Then he said, Vanessa left. I know. Of course you do. His voice was tired. Not polished. Not angry. Just tired. I thought she understood me, he said. I looked out at the moonlit water. Oh, she understood what you could give her. He breathed out. Maybe. I almost felt sorry for him. Then I remembered the suitcase in the rain. Feeling sorry and going back are not the same. I was wrong, he said. Yes? I told myself you were holding me back. Yes, but you were holding me together. I closed my eyes. The words arrived too late. Still, they landed. I am sorry, he said. This time, there was no excuse after it. No pressure. No investor dinner. No Vanessa. No Patricia. Just sorry. I hear you, I said. Can I see you? No. He was quiet for a long time. Then, softly, do you hate me? I thought about that. The answer surprised me. No. His breath caught. I don't hate you, Daniel, but I do not trust you with any part of me. That was worse than hate. He knew it. I understand, he said. Maybe he did. Maybe he only understood loss. But that was no longer my job to measure. We ended the call. I stood there a long time after, listening to waves hit the shore. The ocean does not clap when you choose yourself. It does not celebrate. It simply continues. There is comfort in that. 2 years later, the Malibu house no longer felt like something my father left because he expected disaster. It felt like something he left because he believed I would eventually become large enough to live there. Not large with money, large with self-respect. Large with peace. Large with the courage to stop asking small people to make room. I filled the house with life. Workshops on the terrace. Mentorship dinners. Quiet weekends with books. Music in the kitchen. Fresh bread. Friends who came without needing my name to open doors. A bedroom that belonged only to me. A closet where no other woman touched my scarves. One afternoon, I found the cream cashmere scarf Vanessa had worn. It had been returned with a box of items from Daniel's house during the divorce. For months, I did not touch it. Then one foggy morning, I took it out, washed it carefully, and gave it to Anna, who said it would keep her warm on early grocery runs. She wore it better than Vanessa ever had. That made me laugh for the first time about something that once hurt. Healing is strange like that. It does not always erase the wound. Sometimes it changes the ending of the object. I also learned the truth about Patricia. After Daniel's business declined, her loyalty became conditional. She blamed Vanessa, then me, then investors, then the modern world. Never Daniel, never herself. One day she sent a letter. Handwritten, long, full of wounded pride. She said she hoped I could find it in my heart to forgive Daniel because men with great destinies often hurt the women who cannot keep up. I did not answer. I framed one sentence from my mother instead and hung it in the hallway. A woman does not need to keep up with a man walking in the wrong direction. That felt like enough. Daniel eventually rebuilt, but smaller. He moved to Oregon and started a modest design firm focused on residential renovations. I heard through Sophia that his work became better after the fall, less flashy, more careful, more respectful of existing structures. Maybe losing the tower taught him to respect the grain. I hope so. Not for me, for the people who hire him. Vanessa married a venture capitalist in Austin. Patricia moved near Daniel and complained about the rain. Life went on. That is the part revenge fantasies often ignore. People do not vanish because they hurt you. They continue. So do you. The victory is not that they suffer forever. The victory is that their choices no longer define your room. 5 years after the night in the rain, Whitcomb Works held its first graduation ceremony at the Malibu mansion. 26 trainees completed the program. Some had been in foster care. Some had aged out of shelters. Some were single parents. Some were veterans. Some were simply young people who had been told their hands were worth less than someone else's degree. They built tables, cabinets, chairs, door frames, and confidence. We held the ceremony on the terrace at sunset. Each graduate brought a small piece they had made, a box, a shelf, a stool. One young woman named Layla built a tiny wooden door with a brass handle. When I asked why, she said, "Because I never had one that locked from the inside." I had to turn away for a moment. After certificates were handed out, I spoke. I did not plan a long speech, but standing there, with the ocean behind me and my father's old tools displayed on a table, I felt him close. "My father taught me that good buildings need exits," I said. At the time, I thought he meant doors. Later, I learned he meant dignity. A life without options is not a life. It is a room someone else can lock. The graduates listened. Some nodded. Some looked at the floor. I continued. "Many of you came here after someone told you what you were worth. Maybe they called you difficult. Maybe they called you poor. Maybe they called you too late, too damaged, too small, too much trouble. But building teaches us something people forget. Weak material is not always weak. Sometimes it was only mishandled." Layla cried. So did I. "Tonight, you leave with skills, but more than that, I hope you leave with proof. Proof that your hands can build, proof that your name can stand, proof that if someone throws you out of one place, that does not mean you have no home. Sometimes it means you have not yet reached the one waiting for you." Everyone stood and clapped. I looked toward the back of the terrace. For one impossible second, I imagined my father there, leaning against the doorway in his old work shirt, arms folded, pretending not to cry. Then the image was gone, but the feeling remained. That night, after the last guest left, I walked down to the water alone. The moon was bright. The sand was cold. Waves washed over my feet. I thought about the night Daniel threw me out. The rain, the suitcase, the folder, the scarf, the way his voice sounded when he said I did not belong. For years, I thought belonging was something someone gave you. A husband, a family, a house, a table, a name. But belonging is deeper than permission. It is the quiet knowledge that you do not have to shrink to stay. Daniel's house had never been home because I had to become smaller every year to remain inside it. The Malibu mansion became home, not because it cost $30 million, but because it asked nothing from me except truth. I could grieve there, work there, laugh there, be silent there, be unfinished there, be angry there, be kind there, be myself, without negotiating rent with someone's approval. That is wealth. Not marble. Not gates. Not ocean views. Not bank accounts. Wealth is having a life no one can take from you by changing their mind about your value. Daniel threw me out because he thought all I had was what he allowed me to use. He believed the house was his. The company was his. The future was his. He believed I would run back because women like me, in his mind, had nowhere else to go. But my father had spent years building a door behind me. My mother had left love in the walls, and I had carried more strength than Daniel ever cared to notice. The next morning, when I moved into my $30 million Malibu mansion, it was not a fairy tale ending. It was a beginning. A painful one, a lonely one, a powerful one. I did not become happy because the house was expensive. I became free because, for the first time in years, no one inside it was asking me to disappear. If you are listening to this from a place where someone makes you feel unwanted, hear me. Do not measure your worth by the room that rejected you. Some rooms are too small for the person you are becoming. Do not beg for a seat at a table where your history is treated like an inconvenience. Do not keep explaining your sacrifices to people who benefit from pretending they do not remember. Do not confuse being needed with being loved. Do not confuse being housed with being home. And if life ever pushes you into the rain with nothing but a suitcase and a broken heart, breathe. Take the next step. Make the call. Open the folder. Use the key. Because sometimes, the door closing behind you is not the end of your shelter. It is the sound of your prison unlocking. Daniel thought he was throwing me into nothing, but nothing was not waiting for me. The ocean was. My father's key was. My mother's memory was. My own name was. And a house on the cliffs of Malibu, lit from within, ready to teach me that I had never been poor in the ways that mattered. I had only been living among people too blind to see what I carried.